I thought I had the mic on. So if you saw my words moving, I mean my lips moving, you didn't hear anything, you haven't missed anything. So we're just getting started. Give yourself an opportunity to rebound, and then we can pick it up. So anyway, we're going to do Romans 1, 25 through 27 and 32. But I want to give you a little bit of background regarding the Romans here, where we are, so you have a little bit of context. The idea, or not the idea, where we are is, you'll notice it's the first chapter. And so this is the introductory chapter. This is where Paul is stating what he's going to talk about. And remember, Romans is a very, Jack used to call it a treatise, okay, of doctrinal information, because in Romans, Paul was stuck in a Roman prison when he got the opportunity to write this, and he wasn't going to be going anywhere for some time. So he took the opportunity to put his thoughts together, as opposed to sometimes when he was on a missionary journey, he would write very quickly, right? And all of this, don't forget, is inspired by God, the Holy Spirit. But the idea was Paul had the time to write, and he had a little bit different style. It was very academic, okay, and very detailed, and gives us lots of information. So in this section of Romans, the first part of it, Paul is basically saying, he says, for example, in verse 16, he says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For as in the righteousness of God, for in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, but the righteous man shall live by faith. And so he knows he's writing in the truth of the word of God. He's going to be giving information that people should be able to follow. And after those two verses that I just gave you, he goes into a section talking about the consequences of not properly functioning, of not becoming a believer and then properly functioning, okay? And it's in this section that starts at verse 18 that we find our passage, right, in verse 25. And he's talking about unbelievers here and about the heathen, okay, who have rejected God and the plan of God, all right? And in verse 21, we have in the New American Standard, for even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart, in other words, their right lobe, was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and exchanging the glory of the incorruptible God for the image in the form of corruptible man, and of birds, and of four-footed animals, and crawling creatures. The idea here is that they came to God consciousness. See, what you have here is they know about God. They know about the proper function. In fact, Paul has said that it's in our nature to want to function properly and to want to know about God. That's what leads to God consciousness, okay? And so by getting to God consciousness and saying, gee, I wonder, if there's a God, should there be a God? They got the information relative to the proper God, the proper information, and they decided to reject that and instead started to worship something else. Very much similar to like the Native Americans or others who worship snakes, who worship idols, who worship, false gods. That's what he said when he said that they ended up worshiping and honoring and giving thanks to something else. Okay. Birds, the corruptible man and birds, and four-footed animals and crawling creatures, okay? And then verse 24, which just precedes ours, it says, therefore God gave them over in the lusts of their hearts, obviously their right lobes, to impurity, that their bodies might be dishonored among them. So that's the background, and now he's going to talk about this dishonoring, okay, and this corruption that is going to happen. And in this case, it is focused at the unbeliever. But the concept is that it's mankind, believer or unbeliever. You have these kinds of challenges in your old sin nature, and you're supposed to follow God's plan, and so as to not be overcome by these kinds of lusts, these kinds of sins. Okay? So now with subpoint 3, I am going to give you verse 25. Okay, we're going to do 25 through 27 and 32. So verse 25 says, who, to be sure, by their very nature, comma, and this is hostis, okay, which emphasizes the characteristic quality that confirms Paul's previous statements. In other words, we're talking about these individuals that have gone negative at the point of God consciousness and have rejected who and what God is. So who by their very nature have exchanged the truth of the God, we have an aorist active indicative third person plural of the word verb metallasso, metallasso, asso, and metallasso means to exchange something for something. So the idea is that they knew what was proper and they exchanged it for what was not proper. So they've exchanged the truth of the God. Of course, that's aletheia, is truth, and theos is God. And then we have what they exchanged the truth of God for. The truth of the God for the lie, comma. And have worshipped and have served the creature and here we have ktisis. It's K-T-I-S-I-S, ktisis. And ktisis means basically creation, and then it's extended to mean that which is created, or the creature. And the idea here is it refers to Satan either directly or as he's represented by all of the false objects of worship in human history. We're talking about the sun, the moon, the stars, cows, snakes, goats, sex, like the priestesses in the temple, all of those things that were created, as opposed to the one who created them. Remember, even the Jews, after they had gotten away from Egypt, we have the whole golden calf incident. Okay, they rejected God and they tried to create something that they could worship. Think about that for a second. Think about how stupid some men are, how mankind is, okay? We talk about, people want to think that mankind is inherently good or inherently smart. It's not true. Mankind is inherently dumb, okay? And can be either very evil or very good, but inherently dumb, okay? And to create something, you take a rock, okay, and you carve it into a statue. You yourself carve it into your statue. Or the guy next door to you carves it into a statue. And then you all turn around and worship it? You just got done creating it out of a rock. You did it. How can you worship it? How can it be greater than you are? You just created it, right? Or a slithering snake. What, just because it can bite you and kill you? Well, I'll pull out my 45-410 and we'll show what a snake, what I can do to a snake, right? So all the snakes need to worship me because I can kill it, right? That's stupid. And that's what Paul is saying here. And he's saying it because that's what people have done, and they still do it throughout time. Go up to Sedona, and you can't throw, I was going to say, you can't throw a rock without hitting a crystal shop, okay? Okay. You have people that are, ooh, this is a vortex, whatever the heck that is, right? And they're going to worship crystals, something that they dug out of the ground and polished themselves and cut into shapes themselves. And then they're going to turn around and worship it as if it has some form of power. You might as well worship a chair, right? The difference is the chair doesn't look like something exciting. It looks like something every day, right? Ooh, we need to make something really exciting looking, and then we'll worship it. That's so stupid. And that's what Paul's getting at here. These individuals have turned aside. They've exchanged the truth of the Word of God, okay? So they've exchanged and have served the creature rather than the one having created, comma. And we have ktidzo again, meaning to create. In this case, so we have it as the one who's created. So God created the creature before it became the object of a false worship, is what we have here with the active voice, okay? So the idea is God created the animals. God created the things that these people are trying to worship. So now we're outside of the bounds of the idea that you created it individually, but the idea is that now it's something that God created, okay? But you're going to worship it. You're going to worship, like I say, the stars or the moon or the sun. You're going to hold your baby up to the moon, right? You know, and proclaim it a moon child. or whatever. Okay, you're going to worship the things that God created rather than the one who created them. See, what you're supposed to do and what is actually inherent in our preformed brain, even with the old sin nature, and there's the idea that at some point we're supposed to recognize that, hey, this stuff, despite what people want to say, okay, didn't come into existence by itself. There is something in this earth, okay? There is an order. There is a consistency that indicates that something created it. And that's when you're at God consciousness, and you're supposed to accept the creator, not what's created. See, science, on the one hand, talks about how we have all of these things in, quote, nature, which are cyclic. Okay, or which follow a particular pattern. And in many cases, the discovery of new things resulted from the fact that they understood there was a pattern. And then they would say, you know what, here's this pattern, and there seems to be a hole missing. I mean, there seems to be a piece missing. There's a hole here. Something needs to be here because this pattern is so evident. That's how, if you've ever studied, the periodic table of elements was created. You had, what is Mendeleev, okay, who was looking at atomic numbers and stuff, and he said of the elements that they already knew, which was a handful, right? And he's looking at these elements, he's putting them together, and he goes, there's a pattern here, but there's holes missing. And mathematically, it would predict that there should be something here, and there should be something here, and there should be something here. And lo and behold, as instruments got better, as people's ability to discover, as people's ability to separate elements got better, bingo, those holes got filled. And that's how the table was created. When it was first created, it didn't have, obviously, all the elements. Okay? But they want to understand that there's a pattern. Then, on the other hand, they say that somehow we all evolved. Evolution, how do you have an evolution, a pattern associated with evolution? How do you have a pattern associated with something like that? And now they're finally coming to the point that, you know what, there was a Big Bang, and the Big Bang was created by a being, by something that was greater than us. Okay, that the universe came into existence out of nothing. Okay, anyway, rather than the one having created, comma, who, this is Haas, as we'd expect, who keeps on being, and here we have the present indicative third person singular. So the present tense gives us the fact that it keeps going. It's a gnomic present. It means that the condition continually exists. So we have keeps on being blessed. It's eulogatos. That's to mean blessed. E-U-L-O-G, long E-T-O-S. Eulogatos means worthy of adoration, reverence, or worship. That's where we get our word eulogy. See, eulogy is supposed to be where you're, giving your adoration, reverence, and worship to the person who's dead. They're the greatest person that ever lived, right? That's the whole basis for the eulogy. Or as the one movie, the You-Googly. Anyway, but you didn't know I was such a good You-Googleizer. It was the line that comes out of that movie. Anyway, eulogy. But that's eulogatos, blessed, okay? Keeps on being blessed forever, period. And forever is eis aeon. So it's E-I-S and A-I, long O-N, eis aeon. And eis means into, and aeon means an extremely long time or eternity. So into eternity, so that means forever. Okay? So we're not done yet, there's one more word, but we have who, to be sure, by their very nature, have exchanged the truth of the God for the lie, comma, and have worshipped and have served the creature rather than the one having created, comma, who keeps on being blessed forever. Now, of course, the idea, there may be a little bit of ambiguity there, but the idea is it's the creator who's blessed forever, not the dummy that's worshiping the created, okay? And then the verse ends with amen, or amen, as it is in the Greek. We tend to say amen in the English. And amen is a word that means it's so, I believe it, I stand behind it with integrity, okay? It means I understand it, and I am truly going to honor it. So that's what amen means, okay? So that's verse 25. Verse 26. So we have these people who are worshiping the creatures, and now we have God essentially saying, okay, see, when you come to God consciousness, you have the opportunity to accept God or reject God. And if you reject God, then God no longer has anything to hold out to you that's going to lead to blessing. Right now, He has the opportunity to curse you. Right? You have rejected Him, and therefore divine discipline, and or He just turns you over to Satan and allows discipline to happen directly from Satan. And what we're going to see here is what the consequence of this particular case was. So verse 26. For this reason, and we have dia plus autos, and that means because of this, or for this reason. For this reason, comma, the God, and then underline, this is emphatic, turned them over. And here we have the aorist active indicative third person singular of paradidomi. And paradidomi means to hand over, to turn over, or to deliver. Okay, and the idea here is that God, who's producing this action, okay, turns them over as a result of their improper use of volition. God's allowing them to function in the manner that follows, and He's going to hold them responsible for their decision and their actions. So the idea is, okay, I'm going to allow you to do this. You've rejected me. You're going to be able to do this, but I'm going to hold you responsible. Okay, so turn them over to involvement in, and the words involvement in are in parents with two lines through it. We actually just have ice, which means into. To involvement in passions of dishonor, slant disgrace, slant shame, semicolon. And here we have a feminine noun, atimia, atimia, A-T-I-M-I-A, and atimia means exactly that, disgrace, honor, shame. Remember, time, this is the alpha primitive negative. Remember, time, we've seen before, means honor, grace, respect. And so, time means dishonor, disgrace, and includes shame. Okay, passions of dishonor, disgrace, shame, semicolon. And now we're going to see an interesting concept here. For indeed, they're females and here we have thelus, okay, which means female as opposed to gune, right? Notice again, and again, it helps to see these little subtleties. We're not talking about women. Now we're at the point where we're just down at the very base level, okay? Paul didn't use the word for woman, okay? Just like in Leviticus, we didn't have the word for man when we were talking about the effeminate who was allowing himself to be treated like a woman. And here we don't have women. We don't have women who are functioning properly with respect to their husbands, with respect to their men. Instead, we just have a base female, okay? Their females have exchanged. So here we have metallasso, exchange. The natural is underlined. Sexual is in parents with two lines through it. Function. Okay, they're the natural sexual function. For the sexual function, and the sexual function is again in parents. For the sexual function, contrary to nature, semicolon. Okay, so we have, for this reason, thee, God, turned them over to involvement in passions of dishonor, disgrace, slant shame, or dishonor, slant, disgrace, slant shame. For indeed, their females have exchanged the natural sexual function for the sexual function contrary to nature. In case you're not awake and you're ding-dong, what we're talking about here is lesbianism. We're talking about women, their natural sexual function is towards the man. That's the way God created women. And if we're talking about they've turned it over and now they're doing something contrary, guess what? That means they're not being with men. They're being with women. So as a result of their improper selection, their improper mental attitude to become saved, okay, they're malfunctioning. And it's the direct result here. What you're supposed to understand is when you accept Christ, when you become a believer, you now have the ability, okay, to override your, quote, urges, to override that's coming from your old sin nature. It isn't that God made you that way. It's that God allowed you to have an old sin nature. And that old sin nature is vibrating. And when you don't have the truth of the Word of God to understand that is a malfunction, that it's a sin, that it's going to hurt you and hurt the human race, and that it's something that you're not supposed to do. Remember, God says don't do things because they are going to hurt you. Okay, he doesn't say don't do certain things because he wants to be mean to you. He wants you to have maximum enjoyment. And you are not going to have maximum enjoyment in these relationships. Okay, so these individuals don't have that buffering function of God the Holy Spirit, the indwelling of God the Holy Spirit, of doctrine in their soul, of norms and standards. Okay, their norms and standards are being set by the old sin nature and human viewpoint and evil. And we see that everywhere we look. The human viewpoint and evil has been allowed to promulgate to where we have this malfunction. Okay? Contrary to nature, semicolon. So we're talking about lesbianism. Then we go on verse 27. Okay, the men aren't going to get away from it either. So the women are malfunctioning, women with women. Verse 27, and likewise, comma. And just in case you can't figure it out, Paul adds, in the same way, and this is underlined, in the same way, comma. That's the adverb homoios, H-O-M-O-I-O-S, homoios, not moios, moios, which means basically likewise or similarly or in the exact same way. So in the same way, underline, comma, the males also, comma. And again, here we have the word arsane, A-R-S long E-N, arsane. And arsane means basically male, in contrast to female. So notice again, we don't have on-air or anything like that. That would mean man. We have males, base function, okay? Males also, after having abandoned, the natural, and natural is underlined, sexual, and sexual is in pairs of two lines through it, function, of the female, comma, so the idea here is they have abandoned the idea of having sex with women, the way it was designed. Okay, God designed male and female. Okay, the natural sexual function of the female have become inflamed with sexual desire. And sexual throughout here is elliptical. The idea being that, you know, if you read this in the way it's translated in most general translators, you could think that this is just real good friendship, right? Desire, you know, they're inflamed with desire, man for man. No, they're talking about sexual desire, okay? So I've become inflamed with sexual desire. And this is the same passage, the same wording, excuse me, that's used in the passage in 1 Corinthians 7:9, okay? Although there it's puro, and we have to burn. But the idea here is that they're burning with desire, okay? They become inflamed with sexual desire in their longing. So continuing the point, in their longing. And here we have the locative singular of the articular feminine noun, orexis, O-R-E-X-Z-I-S. And orexis means longing or desire. Okay, so here we have in their longing for one another, semicolon. So we have, and likewise, in the same way, the males also, after having abandoned the natural sexual function of the female, have become inflamed with sexual desire and their longing for one another, semicolon. And in case you can't figure this out, Paul continues. Males with males. And again, he uses arsane. So he's just barely acknowledging the fact that these people are human. Okay, he's right down at the very base. You know, I have to say something. I can't say it with it, so I say males with males. I'm just giving you the gender. This is not a man. And we get with later on, we got before with females, okay, we got the word for females was not gune, it was just the base function of female. So we have males with males committing. And here we have a verb called deponent verb, katergedzomai. And katergedzomai means to achieve, to accomplish, or to commit. And so the idea is this is an achievement of that longing or desire. That word's spelled Katergadzomai. But anyway, the idea is it's the completion of that desire. So they have this longing, this desire, and rather than stopping it, using the truth of the Word of God and realizing that it's an improper desire and saying, whoa, okay, I got to watch that in my old sin nature, you know, that will lead me astray. Rather than stopping it, they go ahead and they complete it. So we have committing, and then underlined, obscene / disgraceful conduct. Obscene / disgraceful conduct. And it's interesting. The New International says indecent acts. It's more than indecent. Okay, it's emphasized, so that whole thing is underlined. The obscene, disgraceful conduct is underlined, and we have the fact that it's obscene and disgraceful. Okay, that's more than just indecent. Indecent is, you know, find a room or you know, put a cover over that, or don't do that out in the middle of here. No, this is obscene and disgraceful, as in this is something so disgusting it should never be done. Okay, obscene / disgraceful conduct, and receiving in return. In themselves, comma, no comma, sorry, receiving in themselves. Then we have the retribution, that's underlined. for their error, comma. And here we have the articular feminine noun plane, and plane means basically a wandering or a roaming. It means a wandering from the truth, an error or a mistake, okay? And this tells us that they wandered from the truth. Remember, they exchanged the truth for the lie, okay? So we have in themselves the retribution for their error, comma, which has always been required, semicolon. So the idea which has always been required is the fact that God has and never will allow homosexuality and lesbianism to go unpunished. The basic punishment is supposed to be death administered by the national entity, but there's also both soul and physical punishment provided by God that is above and beyond the volition of the human race. Again, we have the concept of AIDS and other diseases that are affecting them as a result of this retribution. Okay, we have the soul punishment that obviously is happening. Remember talking about the high rate of suicide. The high rate of suicide is associated with this punishment that God provides, that gives them the soul torment and soul punishment to the point where they continue to suffer, to the point where their only choice to end that suffering is to either accept God and start functioning properly, which at this point they're so far in reversionism that they're not going to do, or in the case of they're not reversionism, they're in unbeliever reversionism. Okay, to the point that they either accept God or they end up killing themselves. And so people say, well, why is there such a high rate of suicide among these individuals? It must be because society, quote unquote, is put such a hard limit on it. It's all those conservative Christians that do nothing but ridicule homosexuality. No. I don't know about you, but I can't affect anybody else's soul, right? I don't know what's in your soul. I can't read your mind. It's up to you to function properly in your soul. If I were to say anything to try and destroy your soul, if you are functioning properly, you have a strong enough soul that there isn't anything I can say or do that's going to cause you any kind of soul torment. You are the only one that can allow yourself to be to have soul torment. Once you allow it, yeah, then the tormentor can be all kinds of things. The tormentor can be a person. The tormentor can be Satan doing things with organizations, like the telephone company or almost anything, cable company, right? That continues to charge me despite the fact that about every other day I lose cable operation, right? They don't ever seem to discount my bill for the many hours that I'm not able to get cable or do work at home or anything like that, right? But anyway, you can get those, the instrument of that soul torture and torment can be a myriad of things. It could be your favorite pet that all of a sudden when you're out of fellowship and upset, whatever that pet does is going to drive you nuts. The cat that, when you're in fellowship, they're cute. When they get into things, starts getting into things that just make you mad, right? Or the dog that won't all of a sudden decides to find its voice and won't stop barking or whatever, right? But all of that soul punishment that is produced when those external things hit you is as a result of you allowing your soul to be punished. Well, these individuals, okay, they've allowed their souls to be punished by malfunctioning. And so God, it says here, God is going to give them, okay, the retribution for their error, which has always been required. And if society is not going to take care of them, God is. And so the soul punishment that they have and the soul torment, it leads to a high rate of suicide. It has nothing to do with society, and society can't fix it. The only one that can fix it is the individual themselves. And so the only way you're going to bring down the suicide rate of homosexuals, lesbians, and transgenders, whatever other polysexual connotations there are, and aberrations and variants, all of that can only be fixed by the truth of the Word of God in their soul. Okay? So, Paul is then, he's going to define a whole bunch of sins that these individuals are also guilty of as a result of the rejection. Okay, and so we have verses 28 through 31, and I'll just read it very quickly because the next verse we're going to get to write down is 32. But 28 in the New Testament, the New International, our New American, boy, Paul, slow down. New American Standard says, and just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer. God gave them over to depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, gossip, slander, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, and unmerciful. Okay, so that's another list of those individuals who have not accepted God, okay, and are malfunctioning, okay? And now we jump down to verse 32. So verse 32, we have who, to be sure, once again, that same structure, by their very nature, although having been fully aware of, having been fully aware of, and then underline the mandate of the God. That the ones practicing, okay, fully aware of the mandate of the God, underline comma, that the ones practicing and then underline things such as this, here we go. Open your ears again. This is coming directly from God. It said the mandate of God. Things such as this are, and then underlined, worthy of death, comma. So far we have who, to be sure, by their very nature, although having been fully aware of the mandate of the God, that the ones practicing things such as this are worthy of death, comma. So in other words, these individuals know that this is a capital crime. They know that biblically they should be dead as a result of this, yet they're still doing it, right? They know that these things are lead to death. So continue. Not only do these same things, and these same things is underlined. So not only do these same things, and these same things is underlined, talking about these horrible sins, but, underline comma, and here's where you get the whole genesis of what's happened in the last 25 years. You have this whole concept of the voice of the mob. You know, Americans are very, very sensitive to the majority, you know, in the rule, quote unquote, of the majority. The majority is usually stupid and wrong, okay? And our society was never set up to be the rule of the majority. But we tend to think that that's what a representative a republic is, okay? They want it to be the democracy, the rule of the majority, and the rule of the majority is wrong. But what we're going to see here is the self-growth of these perversions, okay? But they also give approval to the ones practicing them, period. And them is in parents with a line through it. Sure, they also give approval to the ones practicing, and then them is elliptical. It's in parents with a line through it, period. So what you have is the individuals who are giving approval to homosexuality, giving approval to lesbianism, to the whole bisexual questioning, you know, that whole, you know, acronym, whatever it is, I don't even remember anymore. LBGTQXYZ, question mark, semicolon, comma, apostrophe, whatever. Okay. The idea being those that give approval to it are just as bad as the individuals that are doing it. Okay. And they're causing it to grow. So what they're saying, what Paul is saying is that the individuals who look, turn a blind eye and look to it are committing a sin, just like those who are doing it. And by doing that, turning a blind, not turning a blind eye, but actually giving approval to, there's a difference between trying to ignore versus actively supporting. Okay. They're destroying society. Melissa and I were up camping up in the Grand Canyon a couple years ago, and I was wearing, I have a lightweight Boy Scout shirt. That's kind of nice in that kind of an environment because it's just enough to keep you warm if it turns chilly, and it's enough to keep you cool if it turns hot, and it has a little bit of mist protection and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I'm wearing this Boy Scout shirt, and this couple pulls in across the way, and they're camping in the other spot. And the guy, oh, you're a boy, you're a Boy Scout leader. And we got talking about leading Boy Scouts. And this guy, I could not get away fast enough. We talked for a little bit, and then it was like, I got to go throw up. Okay, because he was all proud that his son was gay and was trying to change, work real hard for the Boy Scouts to make sure that they were accepting gays. This is when it was still questionable at the time, before the Boy Scouts flipped and said there's no problem for gays in the Boy Scouts. And the Boy Scouts have been destroyed as a result. And the reason people accept this, the reason you have not only do the same things they also get, but also give approval to, is because not my son. See, it's that whole idea. Oh, I can't, blood is thicker than water. I can't disown my son. I can't turn away from my son or my daughter if they come home and tell me that they're gay. Okay, so if your kid comes home and says, Dad, I just killed 5 people. Okay, son, that's okay. We'll take care of it. You're fine. You just go ahead. If you want to be a mass murderer, I understand. You go ahead and be a mass murderer. Okay? Or, or Dad, I just, stole $1 million. Or, Dad, I took this really nice girl out and I raped her. Oh, well, good for you, son. Another capital crime, right? Any of these things that, that's a capital crime. And so instead of saying, gee, my son is such a upstanding figure and he's going against the trend, and boy, he's going to be, he's a great guy because I think he's great standing up for, for all those bad Boy Scouts, right? And trying to make sure that the Boy Scouts, accept gays because, that's who they are. Yep. And you destroyed Boy Scouts, right? You and the like. Now there's no organization, although the Mormon Church, which has pulled out of the Boy Scouts, is starting an organization, and there are other church groups that are starting organizations that hopefully will subsume and totally get rid of the Boy Scouts. Because there were certain things that the Boy Scouts stood for. One of them was a belief in God. Okay, and they threw that out when they got rid of they allowed gays in. Okay, and the second one was, in its name, Boy Scouts. And now they're allowing girls in the Boy Scouts. And you got to understand, see, it's not allowing girls in the Boy Scouts. The girls had Girl Scouts. The girls that want to be in the Boy Scouts are girls who are malfunctioning and want to be boys. So it's just escalated and gone down the toilet. Okay? And so, I pray every day that the Boy Scouts fails and something else in its place takes place. Okay, so that if I have grandsons, okay, or my granddaughter can have something equivalent to what the Girl Scouts used to be, or my grandson can have something equivalent to what the Boy Scouts used to be, and can have the idea and concept of learning how to be responsible for themselves, how to take care of themselves, how to take care of others, and grow up morally. Hopefully there'll be something there, okay? But it ain't going to be the Boy Scouts, I can tell you that. Okay. Anyway, because you have people like that man and people like all of the other parents that say, oh, gee, I'm going to accept my kid no matter what. Blood is thicker than water. Or the churches that say, come on, we don't care if you're gay. Come on in. Now, I'll tell you what, if a gay person comes in here and wants to start getting doctrine, that's fine. I'm not going to get rid of anybody because they say they're gay. Okay, the whole concept is in order to undergo the death penalty, they have to be caught in the act. Okay, but the idea though is that they better be getting doctored, and if they cause any problem, they're going to go out just like anybody else. Okay. Anyway, subpoint E. We have some deviations associated with that. So subpoint E, also in the area of homosexuality and unnatural sexual function. There's a specific type of homosexuality that is extremely abominable, called pederasty. This is homosexual activity between a physically adult male and a young boy and it too is prohibited. It contains the punishment of death. This used to be openly done, by the way, in the Greek society back in ancient Greece. Okay, you can read different tragedies and different historical accounts of individuals that kept a boy, right? You know, and it was also in the Romans. You had senators that kept a boy that they used for sex. And you tend to think, oh, that's horrible. That's, you know, that's back in the ancient times. And then all of a sudden, bingo, we had this whole thing with priests and altar boys pop up. Okay, it's the exact same thing. You have an organization called, I think it's NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association. Okay, it's actually an organization that's organized to do this. And our country has no laws against it that are any worse, okay, than rape charges, which of course don't any longer have the death penalty. It's horrible. Okay, I'm not going to get any farther on that. Subpoint F. A further perversion of the concept of right man, right woman. It's bestiality. This refers to sexual activity between members of the human race and animals. This perversion is as old as Canaan, and that's C-A-N-A-A-N. And still exists in present day. Period. Remember, as Ecclesiastes says, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, these kinds of things driven by the old sin nature, since the old sin nature is as old as Adam when he fell. Okay, all of these things stem from that time forward. So there is nothing new. And bestiality was in Canaan, Canaan, and before that, but the recorded history shows it's in Canaan. Okay, there are hieroglyphs, the equivalent of hieroglyphs, carvings, okay, of women with animals, okay, and men with animals. Okay, and it exists all the way up to and including today. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. And we have Leviticus 18:23 and Leviticus 20:15 through 16. Did I put those on there? Subpoint 1 is going to be Leviticus 18:23. So if when you get a chance and you go and review your notes, you go back and look, you'll see that we've had plenty of verses from Leviticus 18, and this is a continuation on, right? We had Leviticus 18:22. This is the next one, 23. So verse 23 says, in addition, comma, you shall never, you have low again, have sexual activity and then underlined, with any animal to be defiled with it, comma. And don't forget, when we studied about a believer and unbeliever getting married, the idea is that the unbeliever is an animal. So not only do you have the concept that you're not supposed to be unequally yoked, you have the concept that you're different species. And since you're different species, guess what? This rule applies too. So the animal is the unbeliever, of course, and the believer who tries to get hooked up with an unbeliever is actually committing the same thing here. Anyway, with it, comma, and a woman, and a woman is underlined, shall never stand before and the concept here is, it's a euphemism. The concept here is to place yourself in front of, okay? Most animals mate, okay, with the female, obviously, in front of. You don't mate behind, okay? Anyway, stand in front of, or shall never stand before, excuse me, an animal to have sex with it, semicolon. It is, and is in parens. Haya is missing. Okay, it is a violation of nature, period. Subpoint 2, we'll get this one to close out today. Subpoint 2 is Leviticus 20:15 and 16. And then we have we have an ellipsis here in context, and it's going to flag a conditional sentence. And if there is, and so if there is in parens with a single line through it. A man. See, so I want you to understand this was not just the woman, it's the man and the woman. Nobody is supposed to have sex with an animal, okay? And if there is a man who has sexual activity here we actually have an idiom, and the idiom literally says, gives his copulation to. So the idea is have sexual activity with an animal, comma. he shall surely be put to death, semicolon. And you shall slaughter the animal, period. So that's verse 15. Verse 16. The idea here is you slaughter the animal as the animal has been defiled, okay, and the animal is of absolute no, you don't want to have it around because it's going to be a constant source of temptation, not necessarily sexual temptation, but temptation for individuals to malfunction. They'll look at that animal and go, ooh, remember what we heard about that animal? And bingo, off they go with their mind functioning improperly and being tempted to have mental adultery or whatever, right? So you get rid of both of them. Verse 16, and same thing, if there is, and it's paired with the lines through it, a single line through it. And if there is a woman who comes near to any animal to have sex with it, then you shall slaughter and here we have the idea of slaughter is emphasizing the ruthlessness or violence, okay, of the word, and it's not really ruthless, but the idea is that there's not supposed to be any sympathy, okay, or compassion. In other words, Israel is absolutely supposed to be ruthless with regard to their application of the death penalty when it comes to this kind of behavior, okay? And so we have, then you shall slaughter the woman and the animal, semicolon. They shall surely be put to death, period. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. So once again, there's no excuse. Can't say, oh, it wasn't my fault. Okay, the animal was just too enticing. Took me out for a few drinks, and next thing I know, the idea that all of this, okay, is corruption of right man, right woman. What it is it's an arrogance associated with mankind that is trying to say, when you boil it down to its basics, trying to say that God is lying. Okay, when God said it is not good that man be alone and created woman to satisfy the man and man to satisfy the woman, all of these variants and perversions are trying to make that a lie, trying to say that there is some other means, some other way that man can be satisfied or that woman can be satisfied. And they're all satanic in origin. There is nothing else besides man and woman. Okay? So we're almost out of this, and then we'll get back. Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and end this with a song.